won't do anything substantive until Tim gets here, but I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order so we can get moving. We have everyone but Tim Davis, who is having to reboot his computer. And once he joins us, we'll move into some of the more substantive things. So again, with everybody experiencing all of the crazy things going on in the world right now, it'd be good to catch up. I'd like to hear what folks are doing, and I think we'll start having to listen to Mark Labhart tell us about using rooster tails on the Minot.
Well, I just got done with a float trip on the Minot, a family float trip. If you've never done it, it's pretty exciting. You put into the little town of Troy, and you can rent rafts there. They have rowing frames and dry boxes and all kinds of wet bags and dry bags and those kind of things. And floated down to the town of Troy. It's a 45-mile float, and it's great fishing, just tremendous fishing, lots of wildlife. You are on the river for about 2 miles or so, maybe about 3 miles, and then you leave the railroad tracks, and then it's from there on, it's pretty wild country. There's no roads. It's all wild. Saw a lot of bald eagles, of course, a few rattlesnakes, but great family float. It's only got class 2 and 3 rapids, so it's a fun float for kids too, and it was a great time. Good to get away for a while. Thanks, Carl.
Man, that sounds great. That really does. Chris Hager, I know you were traveling. Why don't you fill us in with what's going on?
Yeah, I was at the East Coast for the last 2 weeks. I just flew back yesterday. Reasons for traveling was just an unfortunate family event, but I took advantage of the situation, spent some family time, and enjoyed what the East Coast has to offer. So I grew up out there, so it was just a lot of fun, seeing some old stomping grounds, doing a little fishing, eating some Maine lobster, and so I really enjoyed it.
How was the travel?
Travel's fine. Everybody's social distancing, even on the planes, or most airlines are still social distancing. So it's like every other seat. And then the airports are pretty empty. So it wasn't scary or anything like that. It was like the airports felt like it was just going into a grocery store. But everybody has to wear masks. So.
Well, hopefully that'll work for us. Kaylin, I know you've been really busy.
Yeah, hi everyone. With work, it's been similar stuff, but I too did a great about 50-mile float trip on the North Fork of the John Day a few weeks ago. And similar, you're along a road for a little while. Mostly it's remote. We saw no one else on the water. It was great fun. And as of just a few days ago, I have a brand new baby sister. So that's the big news in my family. I've not gotten to meet her yet because she is down in San Francisco, and I don't want to travel there, but soon enough I'll get to meet her. So that's the really exciting thing is new life in the world. So
that is exciting. That's great. Davia, you got some exciting things coming up.
I do. So my long-awaited wedding is finally happening on Sunday. We decided we don't want to wait anymore. We want to be married. So my parents just flew in last night, and I'll be out of pocket starting Wednesday, and we're going to take next week off. So it should be fun.
Congratulations, Davia.
Thank you.
Jane?
Well, I'll tell you about an adventure I'm going to have that I'm looking forward to. 3 of my biologist buddies are coming out to camp on our farm in 2 nights, and we're going to the Purple Martin, or with the Purple Martins, so that we can wake up at 4:30 and hear their dawn song, which is something very few people ever hear. We're also going to use my brand new bat detector in the evening. I've detected 4 species of bats property, and we're going to analyze those. And we're going to watch the comet, and it's just going to be really fun.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's cool. We have a cool committee, man. Everybody's doing great stuff. Let's see, who got else? Marat. Marat, are you with us? She may be getting a cup of coffee. How about Mark?
She's on mute somehow, but I know she's on the phone and she looks like she's muted on the computer. There you go.
Marat? Huh. Yeah, she's got a phone connection.
Uh-oh.
We'll see if we can figure that technical thing
Wait,
out.
Marat, it looks like we heard you for a second.
Yeah. It won't let me unmute.
We got you.
I've unmuted you.
We just heard you.
Okay, great. Thank you. You can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, good morning. I've been, I guess, just like everybody else, finding a lot of solace in nature. Spent a day kayaking at Three Creeks Lake at 6,000 feet. We've talked about it. All of the local sisters people love that place, and just been watching the flower progression there from shooting stars to now elephant's head, and just beautiful penstemon everywhere. And there's bald eagles that fight over fish with osprey, so it's super fun. And we're heading to Hosmer Lake to go kayaking tomorrow and camping. So trying to stay out of trouble and teaching yoga a lot, with a lot of meditation. A lot of people are very anxious, sad, depressed about everything that's going on. And so it's helpful for me to have to be cheerful and positive and focus on gratitude 2 or 3 times a week for myself, just so I can teach it as well. That's all.
Thanks, Marat. Sherilyn.
Well, ironically, to follow up with Marat, I finally got my kayak out this past Saturday. Here in California, we require a lot of inspections at the boat launches for invasive species control. And because of COVID down in California still being a problem, most of them are closed. So you have to look really hard for a place to take a kayak out that doesn't require one of these inspections. So we did find one. We got there. Unfortunately, the water was a little choppy, so we didn't stay out as long as we would have liked, but we found a trail down to a nice beach and had lunch, and it was still a delightful day out and not sitting at home. So it was great.
Once again, a common theme that people, everybody, everywhere wants to be outside. Mark Stern.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. We too had some outside activities. We were in Central Oregon for a few days and had a great hike up towards Three Finger Jack, a place called Canyon Creek Meadows, which I'm sure a lot of you know. But the wildflowers were out in full force, especially in the lower meadow. That was a great hike, a great couple of days. And then last night we went out west of Portland and looked at the comet. And it was a nice clear night, and the comet was just a full-on display, easy to see. And so that was good fun too, realizing something you get to see every 6,800 years.
Yeah, that's cool. It's really nice having that comet out there. Tim Davis.
Hey, yeah, sorry I was a little late there. Yeah, what have I been up to? Surprisingly, not a lot. Unlike the spring, how busy I was. I've been staying really close to home, just going out kayaking on the Snake River, and then the very end of the Malheur River, exploring some future recreation opportunities that the city of Ontario is planning on building a water trail on the Malheur and a green belt along the Snake River. So just been staying close to home, busy on work right now. It's getting well over 90, 95 degrees in this part of the country, and fire risk is getting pretty high. So limiting my time getting out deep right now.
Well, that's great. It sounds like people are coping and getting things done and getting to get outside. And again, that speaks to the the mission that we have in this committee, and it's pretty inspirational what we've been doing. I think we can move on to minutes that was sent out. Davia, can you put up that motion that we have to read, and if someone is willing to make that motion? There we go. Is anyone willing to read that?
Huh?
I see you're on.
Only on my phone. I can't get it on the computer at all. But I probably have the app on the phone. I tried to get the app on the computer and
So is the system working? Can people see this draft motion?
I can see it, Carl.
Okay, I can see it. Is anyone willing to make a motion to approve those minutes? Morat? Well, we need to get someone to read it.
I move to approve. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I move to approve the June 22nd, 2020 meeting minutes with the continued authority to correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation. I move to approve the June 22, 2020 meeting minutes with the addition, correction, deletion of.
Yeah, you don't have to
We don't
read
need that. Okay.
just that
So
first part.
that first part. Okay.
Can we get a second?
Second it.
Second.
I will second it.
Okay, we got Mark Stern to second it. Great. Okay, so we got the meetings. All in favor? Thumbs up will work. All right. Looks like we've got the minutes approved. Great, 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 great.
So Carl, should we have our members of the public introduce themselves?
Yes, please do that.
Okay, so it looks like we have a Holly A on the line. Holly, can you tell us where you're from?
Hi, this is Holly. I'm from Enterprise, Oregon, and I've listened into several of your meetings before, and I'm interested in being on the committee, but just wanted to see what was happening today on what you voted on.
Thanks, Holly. We have Jim Atkinson from Oregon Hunters Association. Jim Greer, remind me where you're from.
Sisters, Oregon.
Thank you. John Goodell. Remind me where you're from, John.
John from the Wildlife Society. Peace not.
Thanks, Tavia. We have Kay Brown from RNE in Columbia City. Somebody that's labeled as KENEM. Kenem. Can you tell us who you are?
Hi, Ken McCall, also from Oregon Hunters Association.
All right, thank you. We also have Michelle Tate from ODFW, who is one of our resources. Srishti Kamal from Defenders of Wildlife. I think that is everybody. Did I miss anybody that's there?
I think that looks good.
Okay.
Okay, so there's one phone number up there.
Yeah, 8294. Is that somebody else's line?
Not sure who that is. All right, well, we'll just move ahead. I sent out an email, I think, to everyone, kind of giving an update on the commission meeting that Davia and I presented our progress. Just wanted to give a little report on that. That went really well. It was very well received. Got a lot of positive feedback. They're excited about what we're doing. I think overall, it was a very positive thing. We more or less outlined where we are in the committee. We teed up the high probability that we would be presenting them a suite of projects for them to approve we're still trying to figure out the timing of that. It could be as soon as their August meeting or possibly September. But again, just to remind everybody, we're going to presumably vote today on this suite of projects that allows us to present that to the commission, and they ultimately have the authority for approval. But that's going to happen in the short term, and so we're quite excited about it. Again, that just was a very nice experience to present to them, and I think we have a lot of support from them. At the time, I was quite pleased to be able to report to the commission that we had exactly $80,000 to the penny, more or less. And it turns out that we, since then, which is now what, 10 days, we have $83,800. So that whole checkoff on the ODF&W license site is still happening. And if we assume that the same basic amount that folks are given is accurate, that's around 150, maybe 170 people a week are putting down some money for this. And I think that bodes well for our crowdfunding campaign that's up and coming. And so I'm very encouraged by that. Davia, do you have anything to say about the commission meeting?
I do not. I think it went well, and the commissioners heard what Carl had to say. And I think one important thing is that the governor appointed all the members of this advisory committee, but the recommendations from the committee go through the commission. So it was a good introduction moment for Carl to say, here's who we all are, who you all are, and what we're up to.
Davia, I just realized there's some really important person missing that we didn't hear from. And
Mauricio sent an email that he's running late.
Okay.
Mark Labhart, you have your hand up. Did you want to add some comments?
Yep, thank you. I just want to say Carl and Davia did a great job presenting it, and he's right, it was well received, and I think there's going to be strong support on the commission. So Carl, you did a great job, and Davia did a great job as always in providing us kind of the overview staff report. So Carl represented the committee very well.
Thank you, Mark. The other big exciting thing that's going on is the fundraising campaign. And I'm sorry Mauricio isn't with us, because Mauricio has really put a lot of time into this. He has helped quite a bit. He's had some great insight. A lot of folks have worked really hard on this. And as you all know, we're going to roll that out this afternoon in a virtual party, and we expect a lot of participation, and we'll be reviewing the materials and talking about the website and the fundraising process, and it's really exciting. And I'll say that Mauricio, I've been able to review these things, and Mauricio and the rest of them just knocked it out of the park. It's wonderful. It's inspiring, and I'm extremely excited about it. One of the things that I'm really proud of is we have a coalition. We're calling it the Coalition of Supporters, and that is organizations that have been willing to sign on to a letter of support. And we have 56 different organizations with a wide range of perspectives. We're all united, I think, in the appreciation of Oregon's natural heritage, and all of those organizations value that. There's always going to be some differences of opinion in how we deal with those resources and how we manage them. But again, this coalition is united in their love of Oregon's outdoors and Oregon's incredible heritage. And so I'm very proud of that. I'm proud that we have this strong coalition behind us. And I think that's going to go a long ways. So that's sort of a brief update on what's happened. Does anyone have any questions about what's gone on here since our last meeting, or have any news they want to add to that?
Yeah, Davia.
So one thing I'll add for the launch party this afternoon, things are all still just coming together for that, but we're hoping to do breakout sessions. We're hoping we're going to have a really big audience, and we don't want to just talk at people for that afternoon, and try to make it a little more festive through some breakout sessions through Ring Central. And so we're hoping that we'll arrange that so each of you will be in a different one, and so give you the opportunity to talk to as many members of the coalition or potential members of the coalition about the committee, and then what their interest is and why this matters to them, how the organizations might be able to get involved. So we can maybe talk about that at the end of the agenda if we have more time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sherilyn, we should do that like towards the end, just kind of tee everybody up for what's going to happen in the afternoon. Let's see how quick we can get through this stuff here. So now we can move on to really the meat of the meeting. And once again, I'm very excited. I was pretty much really anxious to get the results of our scoring. I just thought of a couple of housekeeping things that came up, and that is we have, just to recap, we have 18 proposals that we reviewed. We had more or less come up with a total number of 60,000 of our current funds to allocate to this first round. We had put a limit of 10,000 on the proposals. That's the basic bottom line there. We got 18 proposals before the scoring template went out. We then got 4 other proposals that were late, some of them quite late. And we struggled a little bit on how to deal with them, and we elected in our steering committee meeting to table those. With the intention that we will move forward with another funding round, which we'll talk about further on in the program. And we'll consider those proposals, including the ones that didn't make this round, because we got some very good proposals. And one of the hopes is, this was a very, I think you all will agree, we really put the pedal to the metal on this. We wanted to get this done, and you guys stepped up. I really appreciate the incredible hard work everyone did. We met so many times virtually, and we are proceeding very rapidly. And I think there were some issues that arose, and we're learning as we go, and we're going to try to make it so that the whole process is smoother for our applicants and people, there's better communication. So I'm taking this all as a positive. We did have some hiccups, but all in all, things are moving ahead. And so with that background, we did get these 18 proposals, and we have them ranked. I sent that out. And
Would you like me to pull that up, Carl?
I think so. That'd be fine. If you could pull up that first, the total rank, and see how this all kind of washed out here. There was a lot of agreement on this, with some exceptions, but for the most part, Sherilyn and I went through all this, and many of the top proposals were the top proposals for just about everybody. So there was some agreement, especially on the upper 5 or 6. It was a little more variable below that number. So this is Sherilyn, I guess you can see those numbers. You see how the scoring numbers came out, and that's what we use. So I think it would be a good, well, first of all, does anyone have any comments regarding this and this this is pretty much the crude ranking of in order of what we saw. Sherilyn, I'm not able to see the hands up thing for some reason. Oh, here we go. Never mind. I got it.
Yeah, there's not been any hands up yet, so you're okay.
All right.
I can see
So
it.
then why don't we move to the next tab there, Sherilyn, the top 10. So what we did in trying to present this is we sort of separated those top 10 into two groups. What we have on the top, the upper 6 projects were, again, the ones that had the high scores, had very wide agreement that these were in everyone's pretty much upper choices. We then, in those boxes above, as we all had stated, we're trying to get a broad picture here of what the fund is all about. And so we tried to represent a lot of geography, program priorities, as well as taxonomy. And I believe that that's right, Sherilyn, that those 3 boxes there are the top 6.
Yes, that's right.
So with those top 6, we did well. We have projects across our program priority list. We have projects all across our geography. And our taxonomy is pretty good. We got a lot of things somewhat focused on mammals, but again, like even the Gilchrist underpass is listed as a mammal one, but there's some other species that snakes and reptiles and other things that use those things. So there's a little bit of overshadow. And even the sea otter one, sea otter's a mammal, but the impact will be on fish and other species. So anyway, we had a good range in our taxonomy. So we felt that was a pretty good portfolio, and we added that up, and it came to 51,000. We'd sort of earmarked 60. And if the committee is kind of comfortable with that, I think that we can say that that core of the first 6 is a pretty good representation, and we can consider those and say, we could look at that and say, yeah, that's our portfolio. However, we got another $9,000 we could spend, and we listed the next 4 that you see there in ranking, and there was a tie for 7, and then the 2 others. It's a total of 10. And we thought we could, I think, use that remaining 9,000 and maybe a little, we may have some other creative ways in our pocket that we could include a couple more of those projects. And so once again, I'll stop there and just see if anyone has any comments about what I've said so far.
So maybe, Carl, we should start with comments, questions, or even discussion anybody wants to have about the first grouping of projects.
Fine, that
Top
sounds
6,
good.
just to see.
All right, come on, somebody's got to have something to say.
Well, I'll chime in. I guess, I like the first grouping of 6 projects. They're relatively consistent, not entirely, but generally with how I ranked them. I'd comment for a moment on the ranking process. I think it worked well, but not without challenges. One of the columns I struggled with was sort of the criteria of kind of the track record of the group doing the project. And I don't think we really called or asked groups to identify that in the proposal. Some of the groups did outline that a little bit to some extent, one way or another. Some of the groups I was familiar with, but I also felt like then I was stuck in a bind in a couple times because there were some groups I didn't know at all. They didn't happen to reference that, so it was hard I didn't want to penalize them for what I didn't know, but that was just one example of how criteria are our best shot. And I think some of that washes out as everybody does it together, and I'm okay with that. But just, I guess maybe it's a way of saying I think the total score is sort of an indication of how we're leaning, but I wouldn't also read them as sort of absolute, exact scientific quantification of something that's on point or not. I think it gives us an indication of where we're headed.
Exactly.
Mark, thanks for that. And I agree with your comments. And again, this is our first round. I think as we move forward, we're going to buff it up. I think people will have comments on our grading scale and ways we can do things better. And we'll certainly incorporate your comments. And I think we can make this whole process better. I think it was pretty darn good, but I think it could be better. Some of our communications lines weren't really up, and the template is wonderful, and I want to compliment Sherilyn on that. She just really unbelievably helped us by putting this together and allowing us to do it. So, but your point is very well taken. Jane, you have a comment?
I was also very pleased with how this broke out. It seemed like it very much agreed with what I scored too. So a lot of us must have been on the same page on this. Really good. I thought the process was good. Mark's comments are good. The only thing I'm really pleased with the geographic spread, except that we don't have anything from the Willamette Valley, but we can address that in the next few. So.
Chris?
Well, and as you noted, some of those projects in the next grouping of 4, depending on what we do, might fill a gap there. Sorry, Chris.
I think I actually meant to put my hand down because both Jane and Mark basically, echoing what they were saying. Pleased with it. The only one part that I had trouble with was exactly what Mark said, in the scoring rating, past accomplishments for each organization. So, but yeah.
I do think we have ways to it. I think that's an important piece, but maybe shouldn't be as emphasized as it was as an entire column. So there's ways around that. So again, I appreciate your all's comments because we're going to make this better and we're going to just keep moving forward. That's our plan. So I'm getting a general sense that people are pretty happy with that first 6. Now, I do think we should try to fill this out. And anybody got comments on well, Maret has her hand up. Yeah. Maret?
Well, I was hoping that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was hoping that we would have some time to discuss some of the specifics of the first 6. I have some questions, and I don't know if that's going to come yet, or we're just going to move on.
Sherilyn, I think we're good. If people do, I think we're fine time-wise for sure. If you have some.
If you have yeah.
So I guess just on that first proposal, I agree. It's a great proposal. Maybe I misread it, but it looked like they were Oregon Hunters was expecting a match from the general fund on that of another 10,000, and I didn't know if that was part of the match that we originally talked about for this fund, or it's a separate match. And just noting that it's the money will be a small drop in a still pretty empty bucket. They need another 300,000, and I was wondering, how would that happen? Would we be able to show some movement forward? I think it's a great idea to be part of a broad coalition. I'm just wondering if the match is something they're expecting from the general fund, and what the timeline would be on doing any action with the 10,000 that we might contribute. Thank you.
Yeah, Mark Labhart.
If it's okay with the group, Jim Akenson's listening in, and if we could unmute him, I'm sure he could answer those questions in detail, if that's okay with the chair.
Is that, are we able to do that, Sherilyn? Or Doc?
I defer to Michelle actually to tell us if that's okay. Or Davia, maybe Davia knows Michelle or Davia.
I was also going to defer to Michelle, but I think
Yeah.
Carl, as the chair, you have that prerogative.
Oh, so I do? Yeah, I'm fine with it as long as we're not breaking any rules or something.
Okay, great.
So can we have Jim maybe comment on that?
Is he still there?
I'm not seeing his name up here.
You might be able to ask Ken McCall as well.
Oh, Ken, yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. Ken.
All right. Yeah, it's a busy morning at my house here. I've got a construction project going in the backyard, and I keep getting yanked out to answer questions, most of which I don't know the answer to.
Did you hear
the tail end of the conversation, and I heard a question about whether there would be the match from the general fund. Of course, I know about that.
No, it is all right, though. I'm sorry. I could not get unmuted.
What are we? Is that Michelle? No, I guess not. We still don't have Michelle.
Michelle confirmed that it's good to go.
Okay, we're good. All right, great. So Ken, maybe Marat, could you maybe repeat sort of what you were thinking about that first project? So for Ken.
Well, my thoughts were that it's great to be part of a coalition, and it's a broad coalition, and it's a great project. My concern is that maybe I misread it, that they're expecting a $10,000 contribution from the general fund was included in this proposal. It talked about that being a $10,000 match from the general fund, and also that there's still $300,000 short of being able to actually do the project. And what would happen with that $10,000 this year to show some movement forward, or was it just sort of being part of a coalition?
Okay, the answer is what ODOT hopes to do and plans to do. They're actually starting next week with the clearing on the project, which is kind of step one with the fencing. So that's going to proceed with the help of Oregon Department of Forestry, which is another of our partners on this. So I guess the kind of short answer is, yeah, we're still short, the $300,000 for the total project. What will most likely happen is that project will still move forward this fall. And if we don't end up with the total funding, we'll try to fence the most critical pieces of the project. In other words, shorten up the total mileage, which is somewhere around 5 to 5.5 miles each side of Highway 97 east and west. So we would just shorten the project up a bit. With as many partners as there are involved in this project, we're having a bit of a trouble getting timing on which funding is entered at which point. And the OHA, the funds that we've raised and the funds that would potentially come from ORCF are almost like a general fund, if you will, for the project. So whatever's been coming up, we've been able to cover as long, use OHA funds directly through ODOT under our agreement, as long as it's specific to the fencing itself. So I'll give you one example of something that's not really specific to the fencing, which is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant for $187,000 and change for the deer gardens. So those aren't actually part of the fencing. So that's something that OHA could not fund and didn't have enough money for to start with. But that's an example of something that we can't directly fund under that agreement. But anything else that has to do with the purchase of materials, the contract for for the actual construction, the clearing of the fence line, those kinds of things can certainly be covered out of the fund that OHA is operating on. And we also, under that agreement, OCRF funds, if approved, could go directly through OHA to ODOT under that same agreement with just a very simple supplement. And I can tell you the agreement itself was not a simple process, but we can definitely facilitate OCRF funds going directly on the ground this fall, unless there's some major catastrophe that's unforeseen. So I hope that answers the question. If not, I'm available for more.
Brett, I think I can answer some. I think you were also asking about the general fund match, and there's no implicit promise that match would go. If it comes up and they're still short and we actually get the general fund match, we could elect to do that and direct more money that way, but it's not like an implicit promise in the proposal that we're going to do that.
Yeah, and I certainly didn't expect it to be an explicit promise, Carl. I just wanted to remind folks, if there's an opportunity to expand that fund, we're more than happy to put it to work on the ground.
I think that was clear, and we certainly have that option. I will say that's exciting to me too about this project is by the Oregon Conservation Recreation Fund stepping up to this project has opened some doors for further funding. It got some people's attention, and I haven't actually discussed that yet. So there's some exciting potentialities out there just because of bringing this to the forefront. So in any event, does that answer your questions, Murat?
Yeah, that helps. I'm glad to hear that there's something that can be started this fall, hopefully. And I just thought maybe if you had to wait until you had the full $1 million, it might be years. I mean, I've done these kind of fundraisers too, and it can take a while. And it's good to have the little bits accumulating so yeah. All right, thank you. That helps.
And just for the record, we're almost at 3 years now on this fundraising effort.
I think we're going to be close to plugging that gap. We're going to really work hard on that.
More than happy and welcome any help we can get. So thank you, Carl.
Mark?
Mark Stern.
I had a question on the next project, but I wasn't sure where we are in the queue.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
I guess a question that's really kind of similar to Murat's is that, at least in reading the proposal, they were going to do an economic feasibility study that was going to be completed this coming year, but I couldn't tell from what was provided if they actually had the funding in place to do that already, and if it was up and going, or that was just on the hope list at this point.
The way I read this, well, John Goodell is actually in the audience, and since we're able to hear comments, then John, are you able to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So yeah, currently the feasibility study is fully funded, and the economic impact assessment is not fully funded yet. But I think that given the recognized importance of that, I think we are sort of kind of committed to do it. So in other words, if we're able to get some funding here and there's a small amounts that we can get elsewhere, that we're probably just going to go forward with it and make the initial, commitment to the contractors, and then that we're being hired to conduct that, and then essentially just commit to, a fundraising goal as they're in process. So I think it's considered an absolutely mandatory part of the overall feasibility study. And I think this amount of money would allow, essentially the board will probably just retain those contractors immediately as soon as possible, given that we want to be able to find or to provide the commercial shellfish representatives with an analysis sooner than later.
I can comment on the timeliness of that, and that Moret forwarded me an editorial. I can't remember which, I think it was one of the coastal newspapers, from the head of the Dungeness Crab Association, expressing some significant concerns about the impact of reintroducing sea otters, and particularly.
Yeah, that's right. That's correct. So that was the sense that we really wanted to get ahead of that as soon as possible and get that information in the hands of these stakeholders sooner than later.
So once again, I'm going to just say how timely this is, and by all you guys' hard work in making this happen quickly and putting up with the online virtual forums that we've had, we're getting this stuff out in a really timely way, right when it's needed. So I personally feel really good about it.
Yeah, I should say that since I'm sorry to interrupt, but since I'm answering that question, I'll just to clarify to folks, I was just watching the call as a board member of the Wildlife Society, but I'm answering that question. I'll just wear the hat of the Alaca Alliance, if that makes sense.
Okay, Brett.
I'm trying to play the role of Suzanne here and get into the details a little bit. I had another question on the Applegate Northwestern Pond Turtle Project. That's happening on private land. And I'm wondering if there's any kind of a conservation easement or deed restrictions that would go along with that, because it's basically dependent on the goodwill of that landowner right now. And I work with land trusts, and things change when property changes hands. And I'm just wondering if there's any kind of plan for conservation easement or deed restrictions that would protect that habitat work in the future.
I certainly personally can't speak to that. And is there anybody in the audience that might?
I would just add I had the same question. I didn't see it necessarily as a fatal flaw, but it did strike me in comparing or looking at the 4 different turtle projects. That one was all on private land, which can be a good thing, but it just raised that question. The others, I think, were more on public lands.
Jane?
I have, our turtle organization has talked about this, and it's something that we are very interested in looking into because it's important. I've actually had meetings with Kelly Beamer from the Coalition for Oregon Land Trusts about this very topic of, can we get conservation easements on turtle ponds? So this may be something we can look at separately, but I'm not sure that answers the question for today. It is definitely something that we're interested in pursuing.
I think it's something we can follow up with the applicant to get that answer.
I'll insert my own thoughts about that project. I like that project, and I had a little heartburn about the possibility of it being private land, but at the same time, that is part of what our mandate is. That is part of what we're trying to do. It's attractive because it's not a high dollar number, and it seemed like it was going to do something quite positive. And so I'm comfortable with this because I think a lot of the work that we may do may end up being on private land. So this is a nice way to start testing that out. Mark Labhart?
Well, I agree with Mark Stern. I don't think it's a deal killer, but it would help maybe, Davi, if we could explore that option so that if that comes up in the commission meeting, if this is a recommendation from the advisory committee, that we would have an answer for that, because it could come up in the commission meeting about the easement, and it would be nice if we had an answer to that question. And I still don't think it's a deal killer, but it would be nice if we could secure that property through an easement of some sort.
Mark Stern?
Yeah, I don't know if this is maybe a question, Davi, that you can answer, but when reading all the turtle projects, obviously there's a lot of interest in turtles in Western Oregon and even in the gorge there. But what I couldn't get a feel for was, is there any sort of statewide strategy related to pond turtles that says, well, this is the area that's the highest priority, or these are the things we need? Because they each seemed a little site specific, but I had not much ability to evaluate if one geography or one project was contributing to an overall statewide strategy more than the others. And I don't know, Davi, if there's been work recently on prioritizing projects for pond turtles or not in the state, but that was one thought that I had reviewing these 4 projects.
To my knowledge, we don't have that assessment at the geographic level. A lot of the Western pond turtle work and the conservation actions for Western pond turtle are focused on identifying where we have populations and establishing what the current distribution is. And so I think the answer is there's not that strategy specific for that species.
Speaking of geography, just also to point out for this project, it is the one that is in the Klamath Mountains, and I checked and confirmed, and this is truly in that ecoregion. So it does give us that, helps us with that geographic diversity. Jane?
I can address Mark's concern a little bit, and that is that there are 4 native turtle working groups in the state that have representation from a number of agencies. And we have a plan, but this is a little premature in that there's a big 3-state grant for Western pond turtles, and we are gathering that information. I don't think that spending money on this project would be bad in the absence of a finished plan. This seems like a really good one. And every place that we have pond turtles is precious at this point. So I think that the Turtle Working Group would agree that this was a good use of the money. We certainly, this was a little bit hurried, and there wasn't an opportunity for the groups to meet and talk about what the highest priorities were, but I don't really think that's a problem to spend money on this project.
Mark Labhart?
Well, this is a classic example of if where we had the habitat division in place, we probably could have an answer to Mark's question. So just so you all know, the commission unanimously supports and made it the #1 priority for the next legislative session to install a habitat division. So it's a long ways out, but we'll eventually be able to answer some of those questions if we can get a habitat division restored and legislature approves it. So I just thought I'd put that plug in. Thanks.
Okay, well, I think that was all great discussion. What I'd like to do is move forward on trying to fill out our project list. Well, I think we have 6. And let me also say, we have these other turtle projects. These can be reconsidered. I mean, there's some really good projects there. I liked several of these turtle projects. And that doesn't mean that we can't fund them, even in the next round. And maybe they'll be able to provide some better information to us down the road. Davia, do you have a comment?
I just wanted to note for everyone that Tim Davis put a chat in here that he said projects funded on private land will help build trust with general public, showing state money is being spent not only on public land. Great public relationship builder. So didn't want that comment to get lost.
Thank you, Tim. That kind of echoes what I was saying, and I agree with that. All right, so again, we have this option here of moving a little bit forward. Sherilyn, are you able to scroll up just a little bit so we can get the complete? It's not quite on my screen. It's almost there, just a little bit.
What are you trying to see that you can't see?
The bottom one I couldn't quite read. There you go. That
there
worked.
you go.
So we have these 4 projects to consider and to add to this list. And so I'd like to open it to discussion about that. And I don't want to interject my own thoughts on that just yet. So does anyone have a comment?
Jane.
On these 4.
Jane?
Jane? Is Jane? Jane's hands down. Maurette?
I guess I'd just like to advocate a little bit, if that's all right, for the Link Creek project with Caldera and Trout Unlimited. I think it's a way to connect a little bit with the Willamette Valley, particularly inner city kids, education, and Central Oregon, the Warm Springs tribe, and Madras area. So I've worked a lot with Caldera, and I mentioned to Carl when I talked to him that there's a link in that proposal for looking at the 20th anniversary video of Caldera, and I challenged them to watch it without crying. That they're very good at that, but that program at Caldera has changed so many kids' lives. And the kid in that video that is shown going to Washington and hugging Michelle Obama was a girl that was living in Sisters and worked for me as a weed technician. She's just an amazing person, and it was wonderful to see her keep going that way. So that truly does change people's lives. And Derek is a pretty solid educator, and he's ready to do stuff on video, and he has been doing it. So that's just my 2 cents worth on Link Creek. It's a habitat project to restore habitat on this creek that's been funded already by the Pelton Round Butte Fund, because it's the headwaters of part of the headwaters of the Metolius, and it's the sole sockeye salmon stream that's considered recoverable in Oregon. But this portion would be purely for education and working with Caldera and connecting with kids. That's all.
Looks like Jane is back before we
Yes.
take. Yeah.
Yes. Maria is very persuasive, and I'm feeling better about that project. But I think strategically it would be a good idea to have at least one project from the Willamette Valley. So that's something that would be interesting. And of course, I always want to see another turtle project, but I also think that the Portland Audubon project is strategically good, since there are a lot of people who might give money to this that are members of Portland Audubon.
Mark Stern?
And Jane, I'm just gonna, can I interrupt and just say that Caldera is in Portland. So it is a Willamette Valley organization. It's just inner city Portland kids.
Mark Stern?
Yeah, I guess I'd share 3 comments. One, I agree with Maurette. I think the Link Creek project is a strong project. It ranked second highest when I went through the scoring. I thought it was well written. It was very clear and specific on what their outcomes were, and they clearly had a track record of being able to deliver that kind of stream restoration project. And Maurette, I appreciate your additional comments. I had trouble with all of the proposals really understanding the who, what, where, when, and how of the DEI component. Sometimes they made reference to it, but it wasn't, and the proposals were short, so mostly there wasn't an opportunity to really understand how that would work. But I thought that project was strong, and sort of seconding Jane's comment, I like the Portland Audubon BioBlitz one, partly because it's in it's in the Willamette Valley, which is one of the other regions we're trying to cover, and it also has the capacity to reach a lot of people in an urban environment. And I think that's a great population to be connected to. And I think it's one worth considering. And I guess maybe, I don't know, Carl, if it's a question for you or everybody, but just clarity on, is there a way to fund both of those projects if we wanted to, in terms of arranging dollars or going up a little higher than the 60,000 that we've talked about, but I think both of those would be good project to have in this initial portfolio.
Mark, thanks for that. I think we do have some options, but does anyone have any other comments regarding, and specifically we're talking about these 2 projects. I think the other turtle projects, these are very worthy. I like them both. I think those could be funded or considered, not necessarily funded, but considered in more detail subsequently. So I think we're really down to talking about these two projects, the Link Creek and the Portland Audubon. The other thing about the Link Creek project is it broadens our taxonomy because it brings fish, freshwater fish, into the picture, which is attractive. So any comments on those two projects before we proceed?
Maret?
I'll just add that Link Creek is also an area that there's a fair number of beaver in the Subtle Lake beaver. There's quite a few beaver in Subtle Lake, which connects to Link Creek. So it's also potentially beneficial to other species besides sockeye and amphibians, of course.
Chris Hager?
Chris?
Chris, you're on mute. There you go.
Classic. I was just going to say that I also agree with Link Creek. It scored really high on my rating as well. I think it came in second or third. I think it came in third. And then the only other one that I would really appreciate would be the backyard BioBlitz that Jane had mentioned. I think it's a great opportunity and something that has proven to be successful to, engaging the public, engaging kids, and engaging everybody, really. So.
Okay, well,
That's
thanks. Great comments. So we have a couple of choices. This adds up to about 66,000 if we were to include both of those, which gives us, I think, an extraordinarily attractive portfolio. However, we do have limited funds. It's growing, but we don't really know what we're going to end up with. We had pretty much committed to 60,000 for this round. So there's another option here that I'm just going to roll out. I was able to have some conversations with some of these project applicants, and I happen to have $6,000 in reductions such that we would end up with all 8 and $60,000 outlay. We had to be very specific in this. For us to approve this, we had to know exactly what those were, what those reductions might be, and articulate that. I can do that. I can spell that out for you, unless there's a comment before that. Not seeing one. Okay, so in anticipation that we might hit this situation, I had reached out to some of the participants, and I got very good response. People understood. I said, look, we may come down to either not including your project because it's too much, or is there any wiggle room? Do we have some ability to reduce the amount that we give you and not compromise your project? And I tried to come up with a number. I didn't shoot for 6,000, but that's what it ended up being. And that makes it a very nice package. And those specifically are the monitoring efforts for rare carnivores. The applicant felt that they could go down to 7,000, which would be, I have it written down somewhere exactly. It's like 1,000 from outreach and 1,000 from, I have it. Davia has all that stuff written down somewhere. God, I should find, no, I'm sorry. Yes, 1,000 for equipment and 1,000 for outreach. So then I talked to the Ochoco Trails folks, and there were certain things that they really, really needed in this, and we don't want to touch that. But they were okay. I mean, nobody was loving this, I'll say that, but they were understanding and felt that we could take $2,000 from facilitation and coordination, which would not hamstring their process. The applicant for the Sucker Creek project had a line item for signage, which we all recognize signage is important, but he felt there may be funding for that elsewhere, and also did not hamstring that. So we have $1,000 for signage off of that project. And the Link Creek folks felt that there was some ability to reduce the money allocated for their own, for the work done both by Trout Unlimited and by Caldera to about $400 each, and then $200 from their travel budget. So if we decide to, so what that does for us, that gives us a portfolio of 8 projects with a total cost of a little over $60,000. It might be 61 or 68, 60.8, 6,080. So I was pretty comfortable with that. And at this, I'll take, I think we should have comments about that first.
Carl, while we're waiting for comments, you'll see I inserted a column for what might be a potential amount offered. So make sure that I took those reductions correctly, Carl.
Nice.
Mark?
The Crooked River is 2,000 total. So it's 7,500.
Okay, Mark Stern, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I guess I would just say I like the approach because I think it broadens our portfolio in a significant way, and particularly if those applicants feel like they can still move forward in a productive way, that's a good compromise in terms of trying to cover as many bases as possible.
Thank you, Mark. And I again want to say that I got a great response from them. I didn't feel great about asking them. They were very gracious and really worked hard to figure out what they could do. But I thought we might end up in this situation. And I just, again, reiterate how much I appreciate them. Jane?
I was wondering if the first 2 proposals there didn't respond to you, or whether you didn't get hold of them, but especially for the first one, it seems like that is something where our contribution is just part of what they need anyway. And so I would wonder, rather than taking $2,000 off some of these other projects, if we might take 1,000 off the first and second one, and just make it 1,000 across the board, except for the one, the turtle one, which seemed like it wasn't so much money anyway. I just wondered whether there was another way to shave a little money here and there on other projects so that 2 of the projects don't have to take a $2,000 hit.
I'll speak to that. In that, first of all, the Gilchrist one, I think, without getting too specific, us putting $10,000 into that has some very meaningful benefits if we go the full 10,000. That I think partners looking at this and watching what we're doing, that will be a meaningful thing. And so that's a big reason why I didn't include that. The second, for the Sea Otter project, it would have, in their proposal, what they really need to make that economic study happen was why they asked 15,000 originally. I think you all recall, and they have reduced that to 10 to meet our criteria. But that really starts to cut into their ability to carry out the economic study. So I didn't think that there was any more meat to cut from that one. And I appreciate your thoughts on that, but there were reasons to approach it in that way.
Did you have a follow-up, Jane? Since your hand was up.
Well, just that it also might be appropriate to ask the two proposals that are squeaking in if they could each take 1,000 less or something, so that the others don't have to take such a big hit. We're asking the people who are clearly above the line to take the hit without asking those two other projects if there are some budget cuts that they could make. And if they knew that it was the difference between them getting funded and not getting funded, they might be very willing to do so.
Actually, one of them, Jane, the Link Creek has a reduction on it of $1,000.
Ah, yes, I see that it does. That's good. Okay. So we could ask Portland Audubon as well.
Maret?
Yeah, I appreciate Jane's comments, and I think it is fair to ask everybody. I think sometimes when you see those round numbers, it's just people put in something quickly and they didn't really figure out exactly what they needed. But all in all, I'm very comfortable with those 8, and I really appreciate, Carl, that you pushed the envelope a little bit on that to figure out if people could get by with less. That's always a question you get asked, and it's an important question to be able to answer, because it means that you actually know how to implement. So I'm feeling really good about it. Thank you.
Great. Well, I'm happy to entertain comments from John or Ken or anybody else since we're able to do that. I gave my perspective on why I think and still think it's important to fully fund those two.
I'll jump in a second, Carl. Obviously we're looking to fill a $300,000 gap here, for the fencing. But all things considered, I'll absolutely leave it up to the committee here. 9,000 would be wonderful. 10,000 is a little more wonderful. $300,000 would be absolutely perfect. We know we don't have that kind of money. We're actually doing a part of our kind of an annual OHA get together tonight, and I'm going to be reaching out to the chapters across the state who are responsible for the bulk of OHA's funding here. If there's any more wiggle room for anybody to contribute a bit more. And also, Tim Grethus will be on that same video training with me tonight, plugging the license plate vouchers. So I would encourage everybody here, if you haven't looked into the plate vouchers, have a look at that. That's ultimately a way that we can potentially get more money for the project. So, obviously it's up to the committee here as to what we'll do. We'll be happy with 9. We'll be happier with 10, but certainly willing to be flexible here. Thank you.
Hi, this is John. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to mention, and it's maybe a minor point, but just in terms of organizational capacity and how that relates to fundraising for sort of what I would call time-sensitive, on-the-ground conservation goals is, the Alak Alliance is trying to pick up this ball to restore an iconic native species that's obviously, I think, as everyone knows, is a keystone, literally. I mean, of all the keystone species in North America, one could argue that, otter is in the top 2 or 3 in terms of their actual trophic effects that they have on the ecosystem, the structure and the function of the kelp ecosystem. And as an organization that's picking up that ball, it's just getting going. There's only one person that's being paid currently, or actually 2 people that are being paid to do this, and the board is volunteering their time. And so writing grants and pursuing funds is limited in that context. And so I think, some organizations have a lot of staff and they have dedicated grant writers, and they can easily afford to pump out grant applications to lots of different levels of grants. And so I think I wanted to mention that in that context, and the ratio of conservation imperative to organizational capacity, in the sense that, the need is great, and our capacity right now is small, and we need support to build that capacity to where we can be successful with an on-the-ground result. So I don't know if that helps any or not, but I just wanted to relay that kind of, context.
Carl, you may have noticed that Mauricio has joined us now.
Oh, Mauricio. Oh my gosh.
My apologies.
We missed you terribly. Mauricio, now I got to say, I'm sorry you weren't here. We had a great conversation. Let me just bring you up to speed of where we are right now. We have gone through, as you know, you got sent that template that we figured out. We've had the top 6, and then we had the next 4. And we have constructed a portfolio here of 8 projects that comes in at $60,400.
Oh, wow.
And we did that. And what we're currently discussing, and this covers multitudes of bases for us. We have urban with the Portland Audubon BioBlitz. We have the coast. We have all the zones. We have all kinds of stuff, including birds now with the BioBlitz. And to get to that number, we had asked some of the participants if they could trim some of the ask off of their total budget. And as it turned out, almost, and truly it was just fortuitous, we had the exact amount to get us down to 60,000.
Wow.
Now what we're discussing is the fact that the 2 top ones are getting the full amount asked, as is a couple of the others that were lower asked. And we're debating the appropriateness of funding them fully. I think I'm injecting my personal thoughts on this. I think there are mitigating reasons why both of those 2, we should go ahead and fund them fully. In that there's, first, for the Gilchrist, the message of $10,000 versus $9,000 is actually pretty loud in the audience that I think is listening and watching this for the underpass. So I'd like to go the full 10 there. And the Sea Otter one is, I think, one of our cornerstone projects that says to the state who we are and what the fund is all about. And their need is great. And we're kicking that whole process off. And so anyway, that's I'll say that is my personal argument for it.
And so what we're debating is if we want to go to the 66,456 in order for us to provide the full funding that is being requested, correct?
Well, it's either, the question is, we have this to 60,000. It's that, are you looking at the amount offered?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so we could do this. We could fund these just like it is, fully funding Gilchrist, fully funding the Sea Otters, but taking, as you can see there, that where the discrepancies are, it would be 2,000 off for the rare carnivores, 2,000 for Crooked River, 1,000 for Super Creek, and 1,000 from the Link Creek. Those were line items that we were able to identify that got us to this number. So what we're debating is whether we should ask Gilchrist and Sea Otters also to kind of chip into the mix. And I will say that if we did that, it's a little complicated because we have to have specific line items for us to vote on this. If they said, yeah, here's 1,000 and we'll go back and revise it, we'd have to re-vote on it all.
Right.
Or at least on those.
For that project at a minimum, yeah.
So and I share with you guys privately on the executive meetings, my position in this, and I think I may have jumped right as you guys were discussing impact versus, you know, how the figure will actually determine the capability and capacity of each of those projects that we're considering given lower amounts. I feel that if the offsets that I'm looking at, which is roughly $6,000, feels like something that we can take on just on the projections of the monies that will be coming through our fundraising and the current licensing system. My preference would be to especially because I'm very familiar with these projects, and I felt they were very complete, and it was very clear where those monies will be spent, and especially in the smaller ones, I feel that they will be missing if we take some of those, if we take some of it away. So if this is something that we can fully fund and we don't see that is going to interfere with our monitoring capacity, capabilities, or any other monies that we're putting aside for any other reason, which some of them we discussed previously, that would be my preference. I don't know how the group feels about that.
We have a couple of hands that have been waiting. So Mark Stern.
Well, I'm sort of absorbing, Mauricio, what you said there and thinking about that. I guess where I was going before your comments were, Marette, I think you pointed out that, if you have a grant limit at $10,000, most people will apply for $10,000 or almost $10,000. Just that's how the world works most often. So I think it was helpful that you, Carl, went back and sort of had another conversation to see what wiggle room there was with some of the applicants and where they were willing to go. And that got us to that 60,000 number. So my initial inclination had been to say I was comfortable with that wiggle room approach to get to 60,000. I guess one comment I would have is I know we can't change Portland Audubon's proposal, but in the letter back to them, I would certainly encourage them to pursue, to the extent possible, engaging underserved communities, because in Portland they have access to underserved communities, and just to encourage them to find a way to help bring that into their effort to the extent that they can do more of that. And then Mauricio, to your point, yeah, I tend to kind of agree. Most of these are pretty small organizations. They, live on low budgets. And so, you sort of hate to carve bone from bone sort of in some cases. But I also take some solace in that they said they could continue to do the projects at a slightly reduced funding level. So I'm a little bit on the fence relative to your comment there. I appreciate it. I just was leaning the other way before you shared those words. I'd be comfortable going either direction.
Jane? So I could either go with, we figure out how to fund the whole 66,456, or I would also be comfortable with us drawing the line at the 60,000 that we said we had, and asking Portland Audubon to take 5,500 so that we are under the 60,000 mark. And I think they would probably be happy with that. So I would suggest we do one of those two things.
Marette?
I'm comfortable with both approaches as well. And regarding Portland Audubon, I mentioned this to you, Carl. We worked pretty hard with Bob Salinger to get a proposal from Verde, and theirs was basically teaching kids how to birdwatch. And I thought, well, why couldn't they partner with Verde? And I mean, they only had one partner, which seemed like they should have. There's so many people that would love Backyard BioBlitz. It's a wonderful program. So just asking them maybe if they could, and Bob recommended Verde as a great partner. So I'm just wondering if some of those late proposals, like Verde, could get some benefit from being included in something like the BioBlitz.
Marette, I think that's a great comment. And that's one of the other ways that we, I think as a fund, can be impactful with those kinds of connections. If we can help make those kinds of connections, I completely agree. So so that we can get through this, I think we're just basically down to, and Jane, to your comment, I will say that if we get Audubon to take 500 less, then we have to go back through the whole process of identifying the line item and re-voting again. So I'm okay with the 456. So what I would suggest we do is decide as a group, are we willing to go with the 66 or the 60? And just to remind everyone, and I'm also totally on the, I'm good with both. At the time, you know, when with all this kind of thing was going on, our numbers were low. We had $4,000 added to our numbers since I presented to the commission. We're about to roll out a fundraising campaign. The 60,000 was an attempt to reserve some funds so that we could fund these other projects or review them and include the late projects. But it looks like that number is growing. So the real question is, do we want to reserve that $6,000 to add to what we're going to fund in the future, or are we fine with go ahead and fully funding these? And I think we should just go ahead and make that decision here pretty quick, one way or the other. Any comments?
Mauricio?
Not seeing comments.
Yeah, Mauricio. You're still on mute.
Yeah, so sorry.
There you go.
I am completely up for fiscal responsibility, and also for the fact that if we say it's 60,000, that we should stick as close to it as we can. And my only reserve with it is that if we start to create this system in which we have to renegotiate to be able to meet a specific figure, then we're going to complicate the process. And so I also don't want to set the precedence that we said 60 and then all of a sudden we're just going to keep, we don't have really a way to gauge how much monies we're going to distribute, not really, having much of a forecast of at what point do we reevaluate and we come back to whatever figures are presented to us. So maybe I'm also perfectly fine either way, but maybe we do now need to start thinking about a system at which point, let's say, I remember at one point we said, let's say every time we hit 100,000 is when we start evaluating new projects with a similar cost point. So if we say we are spending 60 now, so whenever we get to 100, then we can start going back to those that did not make it into this round. And do we keep the same cap per proposal? Or, I mean, and this is before we start kicking in the RFP process, right? Which is not until the end of August. Is that correct, Davia?
Oh, at a minimum.
At a minimum. Okay. So I think that would be the only other criteria to consider is like between now and then, are we going to go for another round of proposals, or do we just wait until we kick into that process?
Yeah, that's a second question that I think we should discuss later. I'd like to get this behind us here, one way or the other. Sherilyn, do you have a idea on a way? I mean, I guess we're down to voting on two choices.
Yeah, I think, if somebody
not requested.
Yeah, it's really, we should take a vote on sticking to the 60K or making an adjustment, I think, because then we can start to approve specific projects based on what that decision is.
Can we, well, again, in interest of making this work, I don't want to have to, I think 60,456 is close enough.
Right.
That we don't have to have it be 60,000. Because again, the demands of having to renegotiate the agreement and all of that. So, okay, so what I would propose is if are we going to stick to within a rounding error of $60,000 or not? I think that is a good vote. Do you agree, Sherilyn?
I think so.
Okay. Does anybody have any heartburn with that? So, Sherilyn, what's the best way? Or do we take a voice? Do we go around and have a vote, or what's the best way to do this? We haven't been confronted with this.
Yeah, unless Michelle chimes in and tells us something different, this feels like an informal decision that the group can make. Davia's nodding. So it's kind of, if you propose something, Carl, let's just do kind of a thumbs up on the screen, or, you know, raise your hand if you have heartburn over whatever it is Carl would like to propose on this decision.
So the question is, are we going to, what I would do is say thumbs up on if you agree that we're going to stick to $60,000 within a rounding error. Thumbs up.
I guess I have a question about that.
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
Well, just a clarification, when you say 60,000, does that imply then we're going to fund the 8 projects there at the slightly reduced amounts, or does that just mean we're going to stay at 60 and we may fund the first 6, or we may fund this? I'm not sure if is your proposal linked?
Yeah, and I don't think the proposal is linked, Mark, but I think there's an assumption that we're doing that in order to allow more projects into the portfolio.
That was my intent. I'm trying to make it simple, but I think that I'm getting a good sense that these 8 projects we want. And the question is, are we going to save $6,000, which is not a small piece of what we have left today? We have 83, that would leave us 23,000. If we take the 66, we've only got 17. And so I'm comfortable, and I appreciate Mauricio, of course, complicated everything by coming in first, giving us one.
So sorry.
Coming back and telling us why we shouldn't do the very thing he recommended. But I do like the idea of sticking to what we said. We said 60,000.
Yes.
We're 60,000 within a rounding error.
Yeah, and I apologize. I come in without the context of the previous conversation, and
I think it was good to have that conversation. And so my what I'm suggesting, and the implicit thing is, if we say we're going to stick to 60, then I'm going to come back and say, well, let's approve that amount offered column as is.
Yep.
That'll be the way I would do it. So let's go back to that question. Thumbs up.
Has her hand up. Sorry, Carl.
Yeah, thumbs up if you agree to sticking to the 60,000 with a rounding error number.
I see 4 thumbs up out of our 7.
4 out of 7. Okay, and I'll say, and I appreciate it, Tim. I don't know if he recused himself because he is. Tim has himself from discussions on the.
Yeah, I was wondering if I should vote or not.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Tim. So I think it passes that we should stick to 60. That tells the public that we're being fiscally responsible, which we are, and we don't have unlimited funds. So I'm very comfortable with that. So given that, can we vote now? And Davia, I think you may have some language for us on this.
If Sherilyn can give me the screen, I can share. So I've been keeping track of the conversation here, and I tried to craft a draft motion that I think captures it. But what I did is a draft motion that captures those that we are planning to adopt or recommending that are unmodified, and then individual ones for the ones that we intend to modify. So I will put those up here.
And do those note the line items that are tied to the reductions?
Yes. And so Can you guys see this one? I don't know if I hit share.
I don't think you hit share yet.
I started the power. Okay, so just an orientation to what I'm showing here. So this would be a motion to recommend 4 of the projects at the level requested. So kind of that second column. And then these would be individual motions for the 4 projects that we would modify. And I can recraft these however people need.
Mark's turn. And can you go back into the full slide mode, Avia?
I didn't see the Portland Audubon one in the proposed motion, sir.
It's number 16.
Okay.
And that is a good point that we should check these because I've been working on them as we talk. So.
And maybe we should, I mean, I think it's fine for this to have the number, but that's maybe, just to clarify, project 4.
That's underpass, Gilchrist underpass.
Gilchrist. Project 6 is sea otters. Project 9 is this pond turtle. And project 16 is the BioBlitz. And these are the ones that we have not changed the number. That's why they're grouped. So can I get a motion to adopt these?
This is Jane. I support moving forward with project 4 at $10,000, project 6 at $10,000, project 9 at $4,090, and project 16 at $6,000 as proposed in the July 20 meeting materials for consideration by the commission.
Do I get a second?
I second.
All in favor? Is thumbs up okay?
Probably. Just
Okay, thumbs up if it's an okay. Well, I see 4 there. And Chris, we're good. Tim, you don't want, oh yeah, you're recusing. Thank you.
Maurette, are you abstaining? Oh, no, there you go.
All right.
She has a thumbs up now.
Okay, listen, you guys, thank you. Thank you. This is wonderful. So let's go to the next one. A little more complicated, more reading. So what I would ask is if someone's willing to just say, I'm gonna forward this motion and read all of these rather than go through them one by one. This is just something we have to do as part of our process.
and I will say, I mean, they're kind of redundant. So if someone wants to read them all kind of as one, you could say, I support moving forward project number 1 as proposed, but I think it's more clear for the public record if we do them all individually.
Yeah.
I'm happy
Especially
to do
because
it
you're talking about the line item changes.
I'm happy to do it since I was a chaos bringer into this conversation. Is that a yes?
What? I'm sorry. What? I got distracted by a group chat thing. What happened just
I
now?
said that I am happy to read these ones if we need to read them right now, since I was a chaos bringer from the previous conversation.
So you're
But
making.
we do need to take them each in turn, so one at a time.
Oh, we do.
Should I go
You
for
can
it?
do the first one, Mauricio.
There you
First
go.
one, and then we'll vote.
Okay, sounds good.
Second and vote.
Okay, can we go back to the next slide then? There we go. I support moving forward with project number 1 for $8,066 as proposed in the July 20th meeting materials, including reducing the total project amount by $1,000 for the signage budget for consideration by the commission.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor, thumbs up. Wonderful.
Hey, Pete, Claire. Hey, the truck just went in here and looked like they had 2 toilets, and then they came out looking like they had. Did they bring the wrong ones or what?
Sorry, I muted Claire.
All right.
Can we do the thumbs up again, just so we have the record of the vote on this first one on this page?
Thumbs up. 1. I think.
Maurette, Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Mauricio, can you move to the second?
I support moving forward with project number 3 for $7,800 as proposed in the July 20th meeting materials, including reducing the total amount by $1,000, including $418 from education coordinator time, $400 from the Caldera contract, and $182 from the travel for consideration by the commission.
Do you have a second?
I can second.
All in favor? Did you get a vote, Sherilyn?
Jane is missing right now, so I can't get a visual. There she is. Okay. Yeah, we're good.
Good. Mauricio?
I support moving forward with project number 5 for $7,000 as proposed in the July 20th meeting materials, including the reducing the total amount by $1,000 from the equipment budget and $1,000 from the outreach budget for consideration by the commission.
Do you have a second?
This is Jane, and I will second.
Thank you. Thumbs up or down? Got it, Sherilyn?
Yep, Mauricio, you were thumbs up, right?
Yep.
Okay. We're good.
All right, Mauricio. Next
I
one.
support moving forward with project number 12 for $7,500 as proposed in the July 20th meeting materials, including the reducing the total amount by $2,000 from the facilitation/coordination budget for consideration by the commission.
Get a second, please.
I second.
All in favor? Sherilyn?
All right. Yeah. I'm going through. Chris, were you a thumbs up? Okay. Yep. Everybody's in.
Nice. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. I'm very happy. I think this is, nothing's perfect. It would be perfect if we had $1 million, but we don't. And we did, I think, the best we could. And our goal was to construct a portfolio that told Oregonians what we're about and to provide assistance to these groups to move forward with addressing the incredible legacy that we have in Oregon. And we've done that. I think you all deserve a great appreciation from everyone for the work you put into this and getting to this point. This is a major step for us, and I really appreciate it. Does anyone have any general comments about the, I think, momentous thing we just did? Mark Labhart?
No,
You're on mute. There you go.
Thanks, girl. Great job. What I would have done when Mauricio came on, I would have appointed him, told him that we've appointed him to a special committee because he was late. So I would have, that way he'd have panicked a little bit. No, in all seriousness, great job, gang. Well done. This is going to be a real game changer for the commission and for Oregon. And I think it's going to set a good precedent for where we're going to go in the future, and it'll be a great precedent in the fundraising effort to show that, hey, we're already moving out, and if we just have some more dollars, we can do a lot more good projects like this. So well done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just very quickly, kudos, echoing Commissioner Labhart. I think in particular, the suite of projects, both in terms of taxonomy and geography in the state, is in the spirit of the fund as it was designed. So nice work, and nice work, Chair, getting us to this point in relatively short order in a virtual format. It's sometimes hard to find consensus in these sort of collaborative efforts, but I think this sends a great message. So thanks for your work and for the committee's work.
Well, thank you. That I'm thrilled. I got goosebumps, man. I'll tell you, I do. All right, but we're not done. What time is it? Goodness gracious, I have lost all sense of time.
Yeah, we've got about 12 minutes until the public comment session at the end, Carl. But maybe, yes, maybe since Mauricio was gone this morning, we could talk a little bit about the afternoon and confirm that everybody's going to be joining us this afternoon and any other items that we think need attention, Carl.
Well,
I think you had a few things.
There are a few things that I want to bring forward. A couple of, so we've just finished our first hurdle. We have done what we set out to do. We've created this portfolio. We did it in a fairly hurried manner, but we got it. So now it's time to keep moving. We're moving on. We have $23,000 as of today to spend. I suspect that's going to get larger. We have to be prepared for that. I also think it's incumbent on us, because we are able to move in ways that many other governmental agencies are not. We can move quickly, and in this time of COVID, it's imperative that we do, that we deploy our funds as quickly as we can to get them to the groups that need them, to not only get the work done, but support the groups themselves, so that they're able to persevere and get through this. So I want us to continue forward in the manner that we have. I think we can buff up things like our assessment process and and that form and all of that. We came up, I think, with a great portfolio, but we can do better in terms of being able to more objectively assess projects. I think we have one big glaring absence in our projects that we funded, and that is the outdoor equity, or what others refer to as the DIE space. We had some very appropriate proposals, but because our outreach was not as robust as it should or could be, I'll say that Moret went way above and beyond in reaching out to these groups, but because we didn't have the channel access that we do now have, we've got late proposals. So I think we need to move forward. We have the ability to do that, and I would like for us to consider a means to emphasize that particular space, that urban equity, outdoor equity, outdoor inclusion, to codify that into a meaningful thing as we move forward. And I think maybe what we might consider is dedicating a percentage of we don't know what our funds are going to be. And we can have that discussion as to when we're going to decide to do it. But I would suggest we have about an 8-week window here where we could have another funding round in 8 weeks from now. We already have some really good proposals. We can solicit some more in the next 4 weeks. And I would suggest that we consider allocating a percentage of what we ever end up with in 8 weeks from now toward that space. And that would be, say, 33%, 1/3 is just the number I would throw out there. So I hope I'm being coherent in this. So what I'm proposing is that we move forward. We keep doing what we're doing in the same type of process that we have, but tune that process up. We plan on another funding round to happen so that we are going to make a decision as soon as 8 weeks from now, that's 2 months, using reviewing some of the projects we did not fund, and maybe there will be ways that we can communicate to them to buff up those proposals or have them fit better to our needs, and that we allocate 33% to the outdoor equity space. So that's just my suggestion, and I'd like to hear comments. Jane?
I could go with that, but I also wonder whether it could count if there are components of the projects that meet that criteria, whether that component might count towards that 33%. that would encourage everybody to find a way to do something along that line, as opposed to just saying it has to be a proposal that is strictly that.
Well, I think that we should say that, in that we will assess all projects with that in mind. But I also want to earmark money. And the reason for that is there are several groups that we now know of, that we have connected with or started the connection with, that I want to be able to address their needs. And so I would like to not only encourage, as you said, we'll be scoring every project on their inclusion of that particular issue, but I think it would be important. It's an important message to send that we're going to allocate a certain number, and what percentage that is, I just said 33, but I think that's important to do that. Brett?
Yeah, I think it would be good to spend some more time with some of the groups. I honestly did not contact more than one person, and that was Verde, and that was thanks to Bob Salinger, and he got it one day before the due date. And Bob's been having some other things going on, so we just didn't get connected, and we tried for months. So I think we talked about having a workshop or a conversation, and Carl and I talked about this a little bit, that a lot of these groups don't really know how to work with governments and entities. Like some of the people that just got successful grants, most of these were people we had connections with and knew something about, and they knew how to work it, and they knew how to write the proposal. And I think it would be helpful to spend more time talking with folks. And I do think we have some strong diversity, equity, and inclusion in the suite that we just approved, with the BioBlit, with Caldera, and I think the Carnivore Project, all rated, I think, at least high or moderate in DEI. So it's not fair to say that we have nothing, but I think we could do better. And it may take some coaching.
Mauricio?
You're on mute.
Gosh, it's always. And so to expand to what Marit was saying, I agree. And I think that perhaps one of the barriers here is exactly that there are not relationships that are built within this network and this ecosystem that will allow for more focused projects or opportunities to surface. And that may be just a procedural, just not the knowledge of how to present a proposal, or even just availability. I don't think equates to equity. Just because something is there doesn't mean that the people that could benefit most are actually using them. So one of the ideas that we're throwing about is to actually maybe organize either a Zoom call or otherwise create a very direct conduit for people who either are curious or know of organizations that may have ideas, but just they're incapable of solidifying in the shape of a project that we could potentially help them develop themselves. And now that we have these approved projects that are being funded, we could potentially use those as an idea of what kind of elements we're hoping to see on projects incoming, so that they understand the degree of detail, the overviews, and all the things that we are considering for those to make it into the successful list of OCRF. So maybe that's something that we could determine in the very near future. I would personally be happy to steer some of those or become the ambassador for those things to happen. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Mauricio, I appreciate your offer. And in fact, what I would like to do is develop a subcommittee as part of the moving forward, a subcommittee to try to address these things. And I would like for you to be, to head that. I got a phone call, sorry. I'd like for you to be the head of that committee, and in that committee, I'd like to have Maret participate, as well as Mark Stern and myself, and others if you want to sign up for that. But I'd like for us to focus on that in the next 6 weeks or so, to reach out to these groups that we now have connections with and see how we can facilitate their involvement. So that's all part of moving forward here. And I don't think we have to have a formal, well, I guess the subcommittee is, are you folks willing to participate?
Yes, of course.
Mark?
Yes.
Morat? All right, wonderful. Okay, so.
Just for the record, do you have a name for the subcommittee? I wrote
boy.
outdoor equity.
Mauricio Subcommittee.
I think outdoor equity seems about right.
Okay, outdoor equity. So, okay, good. Is there any pushback on us moving forward like we're doing and try and solicit? So that means for those listening and for your constituents and for all of the people out there, we're open for business. And a lot of what we can do depends on how successful this fundraising is. And that's a message to take back too, because the more money we get, the more money we're going to give out. And I also feel very strongly about moving now, because this is when we need to do it. We need to keep spending money. We don't want to wait. We don't want to regroup. We want to keep the money going out the door, given the times that we live in. So with that, I think, is there, Davia, is there anything else official we have to do here? She's shaking her head. Okay, well, but then I guess the only thing left, let's talk a little bit before we go to the public comments about this afternoon. And Mauricio, even though you totally complicated my life a little bit ago, I just want to say that I had pointed out how you and the rest of the group working on the website and all of the outreach just knocked it out of the park. And
Thank you.
I'm so impressed with what you guys came up with. Davia, do you want to run through kind of what's coming up and what everyone can expect?
Sure thing. So we have invited the 56 organizations that have signed on to the coalition letter, as well as many of the individuals and organizations that have been participating since the early days of the Conservation Recreation Fund, to join us at 1:30 this afternoon. And we should probably test the link for that one, since we had trouble with the link this morning, but it'll be on the same platform. And Carl will kind of be the MC for that. He'll give some opening remarks and welcome folks. We have Representative Helm joining us to give some of the background and context of what this all is all about and where it came from. We have Jessica Walsh-Schaefer joining us from the Wildlands Network, and Jessica has been leading our marketing and branding subcommittee for the last few months and has helped come up with a lot of the content that's going to be part of the campaign. And she's just going to say why Wildlands Network is willing to commit time to helping make this happen and talk a little bit about that. We're going to turn it over to Maurizio, who's going to talk about kind of the stage for the fundraising materials and the concepts that he helped bring to how we're going to reach 100,000 people or more. And then we'll go into the new website that just went live this morning, ready for people to have a look at that. And then a toolkit of materials for people on how they can engage their members, whether that's newsletters, letters to the editors, using their social media, those kinds of things. And one of the things that we're doing is called #MyOregonHabitat. And the idea there is that there's habitat for people, there's habitat for our fish and wildlife, and we want people to make that connection to the lands in their backyard and wherever they may be that they love about Oregon. And so Carl made our first My Oregon Habitat video, and it's a video of him rafting the Rogue with his wife, talking about why this fund matters to him. And so we're asking everyone, you all included, when you have a chance, if you're out doing something that you love, and we all talked about those things at the beginning, to make a short video on your phone and just talk about why you love that place and why it matters that we conserve it, and what kind of recreation you're up to. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll show Carl's video this afternoon. And then we'll go to sort of the fun part of the meeting. We're trying to make it more of a party and less of a meeting, and have those breakout sessions that I talked about this morning. And Mauricio is going to kind of set those up. I don't know if you want to say anything about that now, Mauricio.
Yeah, so the idea is for, of course, to share with them how thankful we are that that this is a collaborative effort, and that we've managed to have so many folks from so many different organizations, all with a shared objective, and we want to sort of provide them the opportunity to share with a small group what are they specifically excited about, and perhaps that they can energize and use their own individual capacities to help us make the fundraising even more effective, and throw ideas our way, and that's about it.
Great. Well, I think it's going to be really interesting and enjoyable, hopefully, for everyone, and we should get some really good feedback. So I think that
I have a quick question, Carl. Are any of the advisory committees not able to attend this afternoon, just for my own planning when we put you into breakout groups?
thanks for bringing that up. Again, just to reiterate what our plan is, you're going to be kind of the idea would be that each of us would be in the breakout sessions, one of us per breakout session, and then your job is kind of listen to what the feedback is or answer any questions they may have, and then bring that back to us. And that will be how we'll conclude the session, is just kind of have each of you, I know you all love to talk, and we'll be able to, not all of you, but some of you, and come back and tell us what you learned from it, and bring that back. So, okay, so I think we're ready. No, we don't adjourn until we get public comment. Is that correct?
Exactly. And Maurette, you have your hand up.
My question was, are we going to be facilitating the platform then ourselves? We will be managing, letting people in and out and muting and all that, or will that be somehow set up?
That's a good question. At the beginning, I can give you more information about it because I'm actually doing a test during our lunch hour break. But I'll be facilitating putting people into the groups. And so I'll be putting Maurette with a group of, I'm just making up a number, 4 people. And I think then, Maurette, you'll have some fairly good control over muting and all of that. And there'll be an established time limit for the breakout session. I think we're planning on the discussion being around 20 minutes. So towards the end of the 20 minutes, you'll get a warning that the breakout session is almost done. And then at the end of that session, everybody will end up back in the full group again for that debrief opportunity that Carl was talking about, where we'll ask for each of you to share what your group's highlights of the discussion were. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay.
Mark?
And we'll be helping too. Mark?
Yeah, just a question, just to be clear, are we able to discuss what 8 projects that we took as, are we putting forth as a recommendation to the commission today? Is that fair game to be part of the conversation at this point?
Yeah, yes. In fact, I was just assuming that was going to be the first thing we announced when we roll this whole thing out. Is that right, Davia?
I forgot to put that onto the agenda for this afternoon, but that's a big deal.
Yes.
And so, Carl, maybe we should have you do that right up front.
Yeah, we'll do that right up front. I think
And
so.
Carl, I've been working here and there on updating the spreadsheet and the charts that go on the top, just so there's a visual if you'd like to share it.
Right. Good. Wonderful. Wow, man, there's a lot. We got a lot done. All right, so let's. I think it's time to move on to public comment.
And nobody has sent me a note asking to make public comment. So I guess we can do one last call, but right now I don't have anybody on my list that's requesting time. Oh, I see a hand waving. That's Ken, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Ken McCall.
I think this is more of a question for Davia than, a public comment in general, but it is my understanding and or assumption, Davia, that people can go to the MyODFW site and use the $10 checkoff box to contribute to the committee here, to the fund, pretty much any time without having to buy a hunting and or fishing license. Do you know if that's true?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay,
People
great.
should enter the electronic licensing system just to make a donation.
Okay, great.
But the Oregon Wildlife Foundation has stood up a separate website that'll just be way fewer steps.
Oh, okay, awesome. That's great. And then my other comment is you folks are doing an awesome job. My compliments to the group. Thank you.
Thank you. Davia, to do the ODF&W website, you have to have an account with them, don't you? I think it's like you have to register, so it's a little bit cumbersome if you're not a hunter or fisherman. So we're trying to make it more accessible to everybody to donate.
You can go through guest checkout to make this donation, but guest checkout is hard to find. It's not particularly intuitive.
Okay, well, that's good. I guess I'll take it as good that there's no public comment.
There's one more that came up, Jim Akeson.
Yeah, Carl and committee, I just want to say on behalf of Ochico Trails, thank you very much for the support. I did, of course, notice that we had one of the bigger cuts, but that's okay, we'll overcome it. And regarding that, a question, could we reapply the next go around for the shortfall, that $2,000 shortfall, or how would that work?
We're going to have an open solicitation for projects. So if you have, we're not going to be as specific as we were. We asked for specific projects this last go around, and we're not going to be as specific. So it's going to be open. You certainly could.
Great. Thank you for that. And thanks for the support. Really appreciate it. And ditto to what Ken McCall said. You guys are doing a fantastic job, and look forward to more participation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, then, I guess, great. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, and we're looking good. Davia or Sherilyn, is there anything else you guys have to say?
I'm okay.
All right. Davia, I'm going to just give you a call here in just a second, just touch base a second. Okay.
Good.
All right. Well, then let's consider the meeting adjourned, and thank you all very much. This is very momentous, and I appreciate all your hard work. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.